hopes for a ceasefire in Gaza are cautiously rising as indirect talks begin today in Cairo. But that optimism is sharply contradicted by the relentless reality on the ground. Despite U.S. President Donald Trump's call to immediately stop the bombing, Israeli Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir has issued a stark warning from deep inside the enclave, declaring that the battle in Gaza is not over. Israeli airstrikes continue to hammer the enclave, causing more casualties even as negotiations for truce are underway. Meanwhile, the scale of destruction is staggering. According to Gaza's government media office, 90% of the territory has been destroyed. Israeli forces now control over 80% of the strip, following a relentless campaign that has reportedly disabled 38 hospitals and targeted 95% of schools. As diplomatic efforts to reach a ceasefire intensify, the Israeli military's stance raises a crucial question. Is this a step towards peace or just a pause to reload? Welcome to Think Tank. I'm Salma Al-Fiqi.
Our world is becoming unhinged.
Israeli Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir conducted a surprise military drill on the Gaza coast to prepare for a potential withdrawal as part of Trump's peace plan, while simultaneously warning forces to maintain readiness for renewed combat. And according to Yediot Ahronot, Zamir emphasized that the military must be ready to return to fight if the political efforts fail, noting the current situation is a change in operational tempo, not a ceasefire. He made it clear that Hamas must not be left standing as a governing or military force in Gaza. Zamir also stressed that the campaign is not over and ultimate objectives remain paramount. He stated that if a deal is reached, the military will establish forward controlling areas to ensure full operational flexibility. Meanwhile, Israeli forces are still carrying out attacks on the Gaza Strip amid hopes that a ceasefire agreement will be reached between Hamas and Israel, with indirect talks taking place today in Cairo. And according to the Palestine Chronicle, Israeli airstrikes continued in Gaza despite Trump telling Israel to immediately stop the bombing on Friday after Hamas responded to the proposed plan. Hospitals in Gaza confirmed that 19 people were killed on Sunday by Israeli fire, including 13 in Gaza City alone. The government media office in Gaza reported that the destruction rate in Gaza reached 90% and that the Israeli occupation had seized control of more than 80% of the strip through invasion, bombing and forced displacement after dropping more than 200,000 tons of explosives on the strip.
In what should have been a moment of calm, Israeli Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir delivered a striking message from deep inside the Gaza Strip, declaring that the battle in Gaza is not over. Zamir warned soldiers to be ready to resume fighting at any moment. His remarks highlight the Israeli military's stance. The ceasefire is both conditional and temporary. If the negotiations over the release of detainees fail, a return to combat appears all but certain. Zamir, reinforcing Israel's long-held position, stated clearly that the military has further war objectives and would continue fighting until Hamas is defeated, both politically and militarily, even if a ceasefire deal is reached. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu echoed this hardline approach, asserting that Israel will not proceed with any other elements of the U.S. peace plan until the first condition, the release of all detainees, both living and dead, is met. As ceasefire talks unfold, Zamir's warning suggests that what appears to be a pause in hostilities may, in fact, be just a brief respite in a broader, unresolved conflict. So, is Israel preparing for peace or simply pausing to reload?
And for more on this, joining us today from Cairo is Mr. Khalid Dawood, the managing editor of Al Ahram weekly newspaper, and from Ramallah by Major General Habes El Sharrouf, the director of the Palestine Institute for National Security. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me here today. And I will start with Mr. Khalid. And let's ask you, has ceasefire talks unfold? And the Israeli Chief of Staff, Eyal Zamir, stated clearly that the battle in Gaza is not over. Is Israel preparing for peace or simply pausing to just reload for the next phase of the war, do you think?
Well, thanks, Salma, for having me. I mean, I think the question you're posing is the trillion-dollar question, not just a million-dollar question, because of the experiences we've had with Israeli ceasefire agreements over the past 2 years, which the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have always broken and breached as soon as he assured his part of the agreement, mainly related to the release of Israeli prisoners held by Hamas. However, this time there seems to be more pressure than any other time, and a personal commitment from U.S. President Donald Trump that he wants to bring this war to an end. And as you know, negotiations were due to start today, actually, in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, and they are not going to be getting into all the details of the 20-point plan Mr. Trump announced last week, but they are going to be concentrating on the initial stage, which is the exchange of Israeli prisoners and Palestinian prisoners, and at the same time the issue of the withdrawal, or at least the first stage of the Israeli withdrawal, or in this case redeployment of troops within the Gaza Strip. Of course, each one of them is a pretty thorny topic, whether in terms of as you know, Mr. Trump demanded that everybody should be released within 72 hours. He's talking about the live 20 Israeli hostages and 28 supposedly dead. Hamas is already arguing that getting all the dead at once is a little bit difficult, so it won't happen in 72 hours. The names of the Palestinian prisoners who are expected to be released in exchange, 250 who have received life sentences. This is also another thorny topic. And of course, Israel wants to maintain as much depth in its military presence within Gaza, as opposed to Hamas or the Palestinians who want full Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. The map, which Mr. Trump has published a couple of days ago, keeps Israeli troops deep into Gaza, but also assures withdrawal from some important areas such as the Netzarim corridor, which basically at least brings further back the fear of forced displacement for Palestinians, but it all remains to be seen. I mean, Trump is saying that he hopes for an agreement this week, but let's see what will come out of the Sharm el-Sheikh negotiations.
Okay, General Habes, given Netanyahu's insistence on the release of all detainees as a prerequisite for moving forward on any part of Trump's peace plan, is this condition being used as a pretext, do you think, to just justify the continuation of the military operations and ensure the achievement of broader war goals against Hamas? What do you think?
Good evening. I think that the negotiations today that will start in Cairo will be very important and will be the thing that everything will be founded on later, because they will negotiate detainee exchange, and then they will also negotiate a final ceasefire, because until now Israel hasn't actually stopped attacking the Palestinians. And so I think the leader of the negotiations is the leader of Hamas, so he will be in charge of taking that decision. And number two, I think that the Egyptians have enough experience in negotiations with Israel, and at the end of the day they want a ceasefire and Israel's withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. And also Trump, he also said that before the 10th of this month, he wants to stop this war so that he can be nominated for the Nobel Prize for Peace. He wants to release the detainees. This is the priority for him. But the priority for the Palestinians is a detainee release and then stopping the attacks and delivering humanitarian aid. And so I think after the first phase of negotiations in the upcoming couple of days, the most important things will be discussed, and I think that all the parties are really willing to reach lasting and sustainable peace. But Israel, as they have always been, they do not keep their end of the deal, any deal that they have with the Palestinians or with any Arab countries. And I think that these days with the negotiations, we will have some points as outcomes, some points from Trump's plan, but not all. I think the most important one will be the release of detainees, and then they will move on to disarming Hamas, and this actually will hinder the negotiations somewhat. And we have heard some Israeli speeches. They will keep on the war. They will not withdraw. And so all this will be negotiable.
Actually, I'm moving. This will be my next question to Mr. Khalid. If a detainee exchange deal is reached, how do you think what would be the next step? How will Israeli military reconcile the perceived success of the deal with Zamir's explicit statement that the broader war objectives have not yet been achieved?
Well, I think, Salma, that Zamir's statement is basically like those of Netanyahu, made for, domestic consumption, considering the formation or the makeup of the current extremist Israeli right-wing government, with people like, Ben Gvir and Smotrich threatening that they will bring down this government if all the war goals have not been achieved. I mean, in reference to disarming Hamas, forcing its leadership out of the Gaza Strip, all these other things. But the problem, to be very honest, that Mr. Trump's plan, 20 points, are very general. I mean, each one of those points require negotiations, and the door is always open for complications. I mean, in terms of the advisory body that will overlook the Gaza Strip, led by President Trump himself, the so-called Board of Peace, and then another proposal to make up or to form a stabilization force made up of Arab, Muslim, and international forces. These are all general principles or kind of ideas. But again, where is this board? How this force is going to be formed? The issue of disarmament of Hamas itself, of course, is a very complicated matter. Yes. But as I said, it all depends, to be honest, on the will and the interest of the American President Donald Trump. I mean, as you know, Netanyahu does not want to stop the war. The war serves his interests, increases his popularity. Yeah. But I mean, does Trump understand by now that his American interests are at stake, and that he has some very important ties with influential countries in the region: Egypt, Qatar, Turkey, Saudi, and United Arab Emirates? All these countries will not be able to proceed as normal in their ties with Americans or with the Israelis in case this genocide war continues. And that's why I'm saying it all depends on President Trump, his intentions, and his readiness to dedicate effort and energy to push this deal further to more withdrawals, to what the plan calls for in terms of the reconstruction for Gaza, allowing in humanitarian aid, the formation of a government that would unite Gaza with the West Bank. We're still a long way ahead. But again, the assumption is that the entire world is now sick and tired with this Israeli genocide war, and they wanted to bring to an end Israel as isolated. And Trump has personally admitted this, saying that Israel has gone too far in its war, and he's going to work on ending this isolation that Israel has been suffering over the past 2 years.
Okay, General Habis, what are the most likely scenarios do you think are apparent in front of us for the continuation or the cessation of the war in the immediate future, considering the public pronouncements from both the Israeli military and political leadership?
There are statements about the war, but now the whole war thing is in the hands of President Trump, and Trump wants the outcome of the intervention of the Arab and Islamic countries. They have agreed upon the general principles that Trump has talked about, and Hamas has agreed to, and even the Arab and Islamic countries have also agreed to. And so I think that we have moved on now. I don't think that the war will keep on going, and the peace process will start, but not very fast, throughout phases. And because all the Arab countries, Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Emirates, and Qatar, they keep insisting on a two-state solution. And all of these countries have refused and condemned furthering the relationships and having any relationships with Israel as long as there is no two-state solution and there is some kind of Arab unity against the displacement and the annexation. And so I think that things could be hindered in a way, but in the end we will not have stability or peace in the region without settling the Palestinian cause, and President El-Sisi said that today. And so there are strong Arab stances when it comes to the Palestinian cause, and this is what helps to reach tangible outcomes. And now the ball is in the USA's court. They have proposed plans and some obligations, some international obligations with the points, reconstruction of the Gaza Strip, and then elections, having
certain steps. Yeah. Okay. Mr. Khalid, moving back to you again. Zamir warned the soldiers to be ready to resume fighting at any moment. Does this suggest the ceasefire is just a tactical decision by the military or a political necessity imposed on them by the negotiations?
I mean, again, the ceasefire practically, Salma, has not started yet. I mean,
I know fighting is still going on in Gaza and people are just dying there, and the talks are happening
yes,
today.
Yes, of course.
Here now.
I mean, the issue is that U.S. President Donald Trump has called upon Israel while welcoming the Hamas acceptance of his own plan. Yeah. He called upon Israel to stop bombing in Gaza so that the Hamas can start the process of gathering the Israeli prisoners and finding those who have been killed, throughout the past 2 years. Yes. But the Israelis, at the same time, Netanyahu has always raised this slogan that negotiations have to take place under fire. I mean, and they have claimed that they have now moved to defensive operations rather than offensive operations, which is, of course, totally ridiculous. As you've mentioned yourself, 19 people were killed yesterday. Today, yes. I think so far around 11 people have been killed. So, I mean,
nothing's
it's again
really
the
changed.
Israeli tactic of putting pressure on Hamas to tell them that, okay, maybe we have halted the advance on Gaza City, but at any time we are going to continue putting military pressure to bring Hamas to compromise and accept Israeli conditions, whether in terms of the release of the Israeli prisoners, the gradual withdrawal from Gaza Strip. So these are all issues that the Israelis have even kept after reaching peace agreements or ceasefire agreements, as we can see in Lebanon, for example. I mean, officially, there is a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hezbollah, mediated by the Americans, took place a year ago, but nearly every day, Israel continues to bomb Hezbollah targets, to attack, installations inside Lebanon, claiming they belong to Hezbollah. And that's the Israeli definition of a ceasefire, that whenever we see a threat, we're going to go after it. But again, we are still at the very initial stage. Everybody's waiting for the outcome of what will happen in Sharm el-Sheikh. And not just that, you see, the real fear, Salma, is that the minute the Israelis get back their 20 living hostages and 28 dead, Netanyahu will give up all the commitments. And
that's actually, Mr. Khalid, that was one of the questions I was going to come back to you again. What are the guarantees, basically, if Hamas hands over the detainees? What's going to happen after that? What's the guarantee that Israel will do a ceasefire?
To be honest, the only guarantee is the commitment by President Trump in coordination with key Arab mediators, topped with Egypt, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Turkey. That's the only guarantee, and that's what Hamas is counting on. And that at least this time, Mr. Trump, unlike the first ceasefire agreement he mediated, where just one day before he took office on January 19,
Yes.
The scenario would not be repeated, because that agreement in particular was breached by Israel on March 18, almost like more than 6 months ago, almost 7 months ago. And the Trump administration tolerated this and gave even Israel the green light to advance on Gaza, believing into the ridiculous argument by Netanyahu that more military pressure will bring compromises. But I think, or at least according to some analysts, the irresponsible Israeli attack against Qatar maybe brought Trump to reconsider his kind of agenda, and because Qatar was very angry, Arab countries were angry, Muslim countries were angry. So together with the increasing number of countries recognizing the state of Palestine, so probably and internal Israeli pressure as well. Of course, many people inside Israel now want the war to come to an end. So those are the guarantees. Otherwise, if it's left to Netanyahu and his right-wing extremist government, no, he thrives on wars and expanding the wars, and think that this is his way to stay in office.
Yeah. General Habis, coming back again to the same statement by Zamir, stressing that the military will still continue fighting until Hamas is defeated, both politically and militarily. How realistic is this objective to achieve, and does it mean any negotiated ceasefire is inherently temporary and fragile?
I think there is no reason for Israel to keep the war. They wanted to get the detainees back, and so if they agree in Sharm el-Sheikh today and tomorrow to release the Israeli detainees and also delivering the dead bodies of the Israelis, I don't think that they will have any reason to keep the war, either Israel or the USA. But something that might hinder the negotiations, there will be disputes over the names of the detainees, the Palestinian detainees that will be released. But at the end of the day, after this phase, we might see some operations or maybe assassination attempts. But I think that the negotiating delegations that are negotiating with Israel now, I think that they will find a solution with the USA to reach a ceasefire and stop the military operations, because at the end of the day, if Israel doesn't keep its end of the deal and follow the ceasefire, everything will start again, and we will see more atrocities. And so it's not in the benefit of the USA, Israel, or any country in the world for the war to keep on going, because the whole world, there is some collective agreement that we need stability and peace in the region, and they have also asked for a two-state
Netanyahu enjoys wars and wants to keep going. It increases his popularity, and for his own reasons, he would like the war to keep going. What would be the guarantee that he would actually stop?
I don't think that Netanyahu will keep on with the war. Netanyahu might act like this in some of the negotiation processes, because continuing the war isn't in his benefit, especially after the release of detainees. But as I said, maybe they will carry out some assassination attempts. But at the end of the day, the whole world have agreed on Trump's proposal, and the Arab and Islamic countries have also agreed on this. And so any new war, the whole world will support Palestine after this. And I don't think that Trump himself will support Israel with this, because they need peace in their region.
Mr. Khalid, given the synchronized hardline messages from both the military chief and the prime minister, does this demonstrate a unified and unyielding national strategy, or does it just mask internal debate about the post-war endgame?
It's not just internal debate, Salma, it's internal divisions. It's been known that even like the Israeli current chief of staff, he's been against the Netanyahu's pressure and decision to take over Gaza City. And obviously, according to military experts, at least this advance in Gaza City could have gone a little bit faster. But the Israeli army is always concerned about occupying more than 2 million is Palestinian people and taking care of them, and also suffering guerrilla warfare and attacks against Israeli soldiers the deeper they get into Gaza. So I mean, obviously, for sure.
Okay, we lost Mr. Khalid. Let me go back to General Habis. Sir, indirect talks are underway in Cairo today, yet the Israeli forces are still carrying out strikes that killed 19 people on Sunday alone. How do you reconcile this ongoing military action with the diplomatic process actually happening now and aiming at achieving a ceasefire?
The Israelis are keeping up with the policy of pressuring Hamas, and the Israeli occupation forces said that if Hamas doesn't comply to all the points that have been agreed upon, that the military operations will keep on going. And I think that this is tactical from Israel's side and the ongoing operations, because they are trying to force the Palestinians out and not have them return to their homes until the two things are done. First one is the detainee release, and then disarming Hamas. And so I think that Israel will start to withdraw gradually from the land, and then people will start going back to their homes or to their land. But Israel will keep on its military operations with the strikes, because Israel, up till now, they haven't declared a ceasefire, but they have declared a truce. And a truce doesn't mean a ceasefire. It means that in some certain points that the detainees may be in, to release them. So maybe they're stopping the war there only. And so I think in this phase, the mediators with Israel will reach an actual ceasefire and then start the withdrawing process. And these are all threats from Israel and the far right government, and raising Netanyahu to say to the far right leaders that he hasn't bowed to anyone.
Mr. Khalid, Israel has reportedly taken control of over 80% of Gaza through its operations. Does this scale of ground control indicate that Israel has already achieved a significant part of its war objectives, regardless of the fate of Hamas's political structure?
Well, I mean, to be honest, Salma, this is like a very controversial issue, because practically speaking, Israel has achieved its goals in destroying and weakening Hamas to a very great extent long time ago. Many people think that like at least a year ago. I mean, this war could have stopped easily, while Israel could still claim that it's achieved, its goal of destroying Hamas's weapons or disabling it from attacking Israel again in a manner similar to October 7. But again, the main bargaining chip in Hamas's hand was the issue of the Israeli prisoners. And that's why Israel continued to wage its war against Hamas and claiming that it will continue until achieving ultimate victory, which is very difficult to define even by the Israeli government itself. My main fear is that this argument about the need to disarm Hamas or the need to make sure that Hamas has no role in governance will always be a reason for Netanyahu to use this leverage of Israeli presence in Gaza to continue attacking Palestinians within different cities under the claim that he's targeting leaders of Hamas. But at least in the initial stage, this 80% that you're mentioning and talking about should be reduced relatively. And I guess among the very difficult tasks that the negotiators and mediators need to deal with will not just be the first stage of Israeli withdrawal to reduce their military presence in Gaza, but also the second and third stages, because as you know, Israeli Prime Minister has declared that Israel will always maintain military presence in the so-called buffer zones along Gaza's borders with both Egypt and with Israel. And of course, this is not satisfactory or acceptable either to the Palestinians or to Egypt itself, because in our own peace agreement with Israel, Israel should not maintain any military presence on the border between Egypt and Gaza. There should be only Palestinian troops. So those are all issues that are going to be toughly negotiated in the near future.
And that was Mr. Khalid Dawood, the managing editor of Al Ahram Weekly newspaper, and Major General Habis El Sharouf, the director of the Palestine Institute for National Security Research. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with me tonight, and thank you so much for your insights. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tank, which always unveils the complexities of our changing world. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.